Okay, so nice to meet you. I am Montani, and I work for the United Nations Global Service Center, which is the logistic base of the UN. And I am a OpenStreetMap contributor since 2016, when I started Polymappers activities in Politecnico di Milano together with Federica and other students. Federica will speak later about Polymappers. So today I'm speaking about UN Mappers, which is like a community of contributors that are helping the United Nations with cartographic efforts. But before starting, I want to speak about the logistic base of the UN. It is situated in Brindisi, in southern Italy, and there is also another base in Valencia. And basically, the logistic base is offering different services to the peacekeeping missions. So we are working under the Secretariat of the UN, and we are providing like supply chain and logistic operations for the peacekeeping missions. So we are shipping supplies like food, vehicles, containers, buildings for the building material for the peacekeeping missions, and also we are gathering it back once the missions are closing. And then we also provide like information and telecommunication services. Yeah. And in particular, I'm working, with regarding the production of just spatial information. And then we also host trainings and conferences for both military and political personnel. So as you can see, like peacekeeping missions are all over the world. We are working mainly in Africa, but there are also missions in Asia and in South America, and also Europe as well. So one of the mandates of the Global Service Center was always to provide topographic maps to the military personnel, so the blue helmets. You can imagine, being in a conflict area, you don't have access to electricity and internet, so you are still navigating with paper maps, like in the old-fashioned way. What the militaries are using are the topographic maps for tactical operations. So they are checking the patrolling routes and also the international borders by also navigating with paper maps. And on those maps, there are like all the topographic features like land cover, land use, road network, and waterways. The point is that in the past, the Global Service Center was producing these maps using private databases. So we were buying satellite imagery and, let's say, tracing vectorial data on top of it. And the data was like getting outdated very soon. It wasn't maintained. It was relevant no more. And also was very expensive because there was people editing it without reviewing it. So that was pretty expensive. So the UN decided to move to OpenStreetMap. That is like a global database of open maps. In order to achieve this maintainability of the data over time. So as the UN, like we have many challenges in producing cartographic data. First of all, if we use only commercial providers, there is like a lack of base data. So you can see here, I always bring this example. It's like actually a village in Google Maps, a village in Somalia called the Wanlagwein village. And as you can see, there is completely nothing. Like there are streets. There is the residential area and also some clinics, but those are not present on Google Maps because commercial providers typically don't have any interest in mapping, let's say, areas of the world that are under development. Then we have also a lack of operational data, so we need a service to also show operational data that cannot be shared publicly with the peacekeepers. So police checkpoints or also the position of the troops. So we need a custom solution for this. There is also the problem of non-authoritative boundaries. So as the UN, we also have to be very careful in which international boundaries we are depicting. So for example, if we use open data as OpenStreetMap, we may have a problem because everybody can change international borders whenever they want. So like in this case, you can see there is no Western Sahara country delimited from Morocco. And then we also the non-authoritative geographical names. So we need to have to use also internationally recognized geographic names for places and cities. Here I'm putting the example of Pristina, the capital city of Kosovo, that is displayed in Google Maps with both the Serbian and Albanian spelling. But you may think about like the recent days, the Gulf of America, that you can see it in Google Maps already as a Gulf of America, while typically, I mean, all the geographical names are internationally discussed in the UN through the General Assembly, the Security Council, and so on, and then those are approved later on. So you may see something on a map that is not the international recognized name or toponymy. So we came up with this solution that is called UN Maps. So UN Maps is basically, as you can imagine, like a version of Google Maps, but only for the UN personnel. That is having like a bunch of services like the navigation, the visualization of operational data, three-dimensional visualization of the data, directional and search features, and also all the cartographic products. And I'm going to explain a bit in the coming slides. So in the street map, that is like basically the navigation, the base map that we are providing, you can see all the OSM data. I mean, this is data coming from OSM, and also we overlay on top of it UN authoritative data. We do have like teams of consultants working specifically with the visualization and the symbology of the maps. So this base map, as you can see here, is like the standard version, and it can be embedded by other UN entities as their map in their websites. So like whenever you see this map is maintained by our team in Brindisi. And as you can imagine, like designers are also working on different styles for the map. So we have in this case the light background that is more suitable for certain applications. So the UN colleagues can decide also which base maps they want to use, and of course the dark version. So this is suitable for different cartographic products. We do have the image map that is showing all the satellite imagery collected by the UN and also drone imagery in the field operations. The terrain map is showing the topography overlaid on the standard base map. And then we have also three-dimensional visualization of the data, that is the globe. So here we are taking the data from OpenStreetMap, as you can see, and this is like just an extrusion of buildings through vector tiles. But we do have also some teams working with virtual reality. So they are taking data from OSM and using it for procedural modeling. So they are designing buildings using data that is open and taken directly from OpenStreetMap. We do have the operational map. This one is to check the operational data. So we have in this example Abyei, that is a region between Sudan and South Sudan, and we have all the UN camps and the flights that are connecting the different camps in the field, as well as the location of troops. And this is like a very important information for the personnel on the field. And as well, like those two services, like the search and the direction, is very interesting because here we are trying to make sense out of this double data sets, like the open data on one side and the UN authoritative data on the other side. So here we are developing code to, let's say, basically deal with the geocoding of different of features coming from different places. So we have, in this case, the UN camps, but we have also to make sense out of the data that we are querying from open data. And the directional features. So this is interesting because UN peacekeepers are generally interested in taking like the most safe route in order to come back to the base, for example. So what we are doing is to allow the users to choose where they are coming from, and the software will select all the OpenStreetMap roads in order to reach, let's say, the authoritative roads that we have been checking and patrolling. So it's taking all the open data as much as possible until it reaches the safest route, and then taking that route to come back to the field camps. So in the following, I'm explaining about the maps on demand. This is a web service in which even non-GIS personnel can print their own PDF maps. So it's like a web application. Here the user can choose what type of product they want to download. In this case, we have the topographic map, but we also can select the urban or the site maps. So you see some squares in the website. So the user can select one of those squares and print automatically a PDF map that then will be printed on paper. And as you can see here, we have also OSM data, but the rendering is, let's say, military rendering is called the MGCP standard. So we are both changing the visualization of OSM data, of course, but also generalizing the data in order to have the level of scale for the map that is needed for a topographic map. That in this case is 1 to 50,000 scale maps. Then we have also urban maps, so the users can decide to query OpenStreetMap data. In this case, a point of interest. So they can select what point of interest to be embedded in the PDF map. And as well, we do have site maps that are very high precision maps of the UN field camps. So in here we have also the satellite imagery as overlay. And another product that we are offering to the peacekeeping mission, this is also like a paper product, is the roadbook. So we allow the user, is similar to the direction that I was showing before. So it's using the same routing algorithm. You are going from one point to the other. But the roadbook is like compiling all this information within a PDF book, let's say, a book. And it's showing what's happening at each intersection. So in each intersection, we do have like a satellite imagery and some interesting information, whether there is a security checkpoint there, so that the user can just go through the pages of the book and see how they can navigate from one place to the other. So as I was saying, UN Maps is used for the patrolling. So the blue helmets are like our main user. But then there is also the planning, security, when, for example, bringing VIPs from one part to the other of UN field mission. We do have also reporting, so those maps are used also in New York for let's say for reporting and logistics and humanitarian relief as well. So all of this is also fueled, let's say, from the contribution of many volunteers and many personnel on the field. So we created a community called the UN Mappers, that is composed by different people that are helping us producing data for these endeavors. Because as Maria was saying before, like in many places of the world, there is still no data. So we imagine like the map to be completely mapped everywhere, but this is not true. Like there are many places that still needs a map, and maybe they also have to be maintained. So our community is composed by the GIS community of the UN, but also like information management personnel on the field, uniformed personnel. So we are also interacting with the blue helmets themselves. But also we are interacting with local communities, with academia, so with universities and high schools, and then also with remote volunteers, and we also deliver trainings to national cartographic agencies. So the UN Mappers community is very diverse, and the way they can contribute to our endeavors is by doing the so-called armchair mapping. So what the volunteers are doing are just connecting to one application called the HOT Tasking Manager, the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team Tasking Manager. They can select one humanitarian project, and as you can see, like there are many squares. So a user can block, let's say, one of those squares and do some crowd mapping. So they are selecting a satellite imagery that is provided by third parties, so is publicly available. And they can produce vectorial data on top of it that will go to OpenStreetMap. So after they finish the mapping, the data is validated by our professionals in the office. So they are correcting the validity of the data, checking the topology, checking whether there are false positives or like things that were badly mapped, so that we reach like a high quality data that is on OSM and is available both for the UN Map services that I just showed you, but also for the local communities. So the local communities are also benefiting from our contribution on the field because they are having data. And I mean, having data is like, I mean, we say it's like the oil of this century, because people can, I mean, especially if it is open data, people can use it to create their own applications. So they can create, I don't know, a routing application in Mogadishu. Now is possible because the data is there. Otherwise, it wouldn't be like so efficient as without OpenStreetMap data. And this is like a kind of a loop, because the local communities in turn can also help us bring more people and help us producing even more data. So the crowdsourcing activities, let's say, are diverse, but as I mentioned, we do have a big part of educational activities. So the capacity building is like a core component. We are doing these mapathons, they are called. So we are gathering all together and mapping after like a small presentation of the project. But we do also have internships. So actually, we are going to open one internship in the coming, I mean, I think in the next month for sure, for one geospatial specialist. And we also do have a social media internship open right now, but that is like more for communications students. So, and the interns with us, they are both mapping, but also producing software from time to time. So in the example at the bottom right, you can see Delia, one intern of us that produced in the past like a routing algorithm using the open source routing machine. Then we also have a learning hub that is like a e-platform in which you can learn many things related to OSM and OpenStreetMap editing. We recently added also a QGIS course together with the colleagues in UN OpenGIS. And the platform is available in different languages. There are all the UN official languages plus Italian and Portuguese. That were those that we were able to cover in this situation. And then after the, let's say, the learning is completed, we do have the mapping part. So you can map either by laptop or by desktop, but also you can take mapillary images. So you can do like a street level imagery collection. Or you can map even with your smartphones. So you take a smartphone and you can edit information if you are on the field. This is something that we are also trying to explore with the local communities, but yeah, it's like a kind of difficulty. Conflict areas is not that that's trivial to do. And then there is like open source code in general that is very useful for us also because we are taking inspiration and code from the open community. And then we have also the communication and the social media part that is very important. In this case, I mean, we are posting on all social media. So if you search for UN Mappers, you will find us immediately. And we do have also a Discord server that is like our platform to do like direct communication with us so that we can help contributors to have like the feedback whenever they need, whenever we open a project. Okay, so let me see, I have still 5 minutes. I invite you to visit our website, is maps.un.org. Here you can find all the information and you can also reach out to us. And I will go through some use cases of the previous activities that we did together with UN Mappers. In this case, we have a collaboration with UNESCO, the International Institute for Educational Planning. We were doing mapping in Madagascar. So basically, they were needing road data in order to track how the walking time for students from villages to schools. So we coordinated the volunteers to create the road network, and they were able to produce analysis to see how much time they take from the village to their closest school in their city. So this was useful because it was also shared together with the Ministry of Education of Madagascar. So this analysis was done mainly through OpenStreetMap data. Then as I mentioned, we also use OpenStreetMap data for virtual reality. So in this case, we have been remapping basically completely Mogadishu, that is the capital city of Somalia, because the data that was there was very bad quality. As you can see, like in the top right, we had like many square buildings, and we needed footprints with very high quality. So we remapped the areas of the city that were important for the virtual reality project, and we were able to produce a procedural modeling, 3D model of the city. We did the same in Tripoli, in Libya. For this project, was very interesting to use Carta View, because we used the street level imagery to help the 3D designers to create the graphic models. So this was like kind of an artistic inspiration they took from open geospatial data, in this case street level imagery. And we also created like, I mean, this data was taken actually from the OSM Libya community. So volunteers were already taking this imagery without us like even coordinating the activity. And also we had one intern producing a fork of an application. In this case, is Street Complete. He forked the application, and he basically he customized the application to create to add building information. So this, I mean, this application that he created is specifically to edit additional building information for the volunteers that were on the field and were helping us creating the model. Then we have also the natural disaster. I mean, it's not our core activity, but it's something that you can do on OSM. So natural disaster activations. Volunteers can map on areas that have been hit by natural disasters, and they can also use imagery that is shared on the field. So in this case, we had volunteers on the ground sharing pictures of Turkey and Syria as well. So those drone imagery were used by the volunteers to vectorialize geospatial data there as well. And also the flash flooding response in Libya. This is something that we have been working on to support the OSM Libya community. So Derna, I mean, the city was Derna. It was hit by basically this flooding. and the dams that were collecting the water broke completely. There were two, and the whole city was submerged by mud and water. So in this case, we have been using also imagery or like analysis from Microsoft AI for Good. So what they did was basically to take the recent imagery and to analyze which area were completely flooded. So this information was then translated to OpenStreetMap buildings by putting which ones were completely destroyed or submerged by the mud. So this information was added back to the OSM database. So there are like nowadays many discussions about AI assisted mapping, how these tools can help humans provide geospatial data without substituting them. And then, as I mentioned, we also did the trainings with national cartographic agencies. So in this case, we were in Bamako, in Mali. Here we explained the benefits of using OSM to the National Cartographic Agency of Mali. Actually, there are many agencies in Europe as well, like in France and Italy, that they are leveraging OpenStreetMap data, even if like they are in developed countries, and they see some benefit on using this data. Yeah, here I'm almost concluding. So this is like the difference between Google and UN Maps in the city of Kidal. So you see in Google we have barely some roads, some the residential area, while in UN Maps using OpenStreetMap data, of course, we do have also like a couple of airports, well, we have a couple of clinics as well, the names of the neighborhoods and so on. So this is like a big city in Mali. So you can help us enter in action by contributing to our Tasking Manager projects. You will see maybe the following lessons how to contribute to OpenStreetMap, or also you can join our Discord server, so you can get in touch with us and speak and get like mapping support in real time. Thank you. This was like a presentation. I don't know if you have any questions so far.
They have to think about questions.
Always so silent.
Yes, it's always like that.
I do have a question. Is it possible to ask online?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Can you hear me well? Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your presentation. My question relates to the privacy aspect of the data in possession of the United Nations, especially in the areas with active armed conflicts that are happening now. So, for example, I'm guessing that what sometimes can be a job of the intelligence unit of some army, you might, as UN, already have such an information mapped and available and stored somewhere. So, for example, the location of the United Nations peacemakers can be quite a sensitive data. And here the question comes, well, how do you protect such a data in places where there are conflicting interests and where this data can be used in for not peacemaking aims and targets?
Okay, good question. So as I mentioned in the UN Maps applications and cartography that we are producing are accessible only by UN peacekeepers and UN personnel. So this data is not publicly available. What we are doing is to take the base map information and the topography, let's say the topographic data from OpenStreetMap. Yeah, I think I'm.
No, it's okay. No, this is the
Sorry.
microphone.
Okay,
yes,
okay.
yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can hear you well.
So this data is like what we take is only what is publicly available that everybody can see and map from a satellite imagery. So there is no private information in that case. The private information is what is coming from UN authoritative data. So the international borders, the toponymy. For example, I can make the example of in Somalia, like the names of the villages are those reported by the peacekeeping missions. So depending on how you spell a village in Somalia, it may be you may be implying the control of one or the other party. So all this information is private. So we add on top of OpenStreetMap data this information, and the service is then private. So what we can do is to take from OSM only what we need, and then to create like a private application using the overlaid layer that is not publicly available. I don't know.
But meanwhile, you are contributing also to OpenStreetMap with the basic mapping.
Yes, exactly. But I mean, our contribution to OpenStreetMap is the production of whatever you can see from satellite imagery, so publicly available data. We are not putting on OSM authoritative or like sensitive data. I don't know if this is your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other question so far?
Less than, oh, there is one question.
Yes.
I have a question that I noticed that the professor said like before that the UN mappers they define some borders, which I saw is much different from Google Maps or something. And how you like define these borders? Is it by Google Control, or it should be like something? I just want to know how you define the border.
You mean the international borders?
Repeat the question for,
Yes.
for the people.
So the question is how international borders are depicted in our maps and how they are decided, because like they may be different from what you see on Google Maps. So in the UN, you know, like there are like several bodies, but some are more important than others, especially the Security Council. That is basically composed by all the member states that won the Second World War. So we have Russia, China, the US, UK, and France. So those are taking, let's say, the most important decisions at the geopolitical level. And then all the international borders, as well as all the international laws, those are decided by the General Assembly. So the General Assembly is basically all the member states, and they are all voting for common decisions. No, so the UN is not like imposing anything at the political level. They are just adopting what the General Assembly is deciding. So it's like the representation of the international community. So the borders, those are discussed by the General Assembly, and those are decided. It's decided by the international community. So internally in the UN, we do have a data set that is depicting all the borders as they have been discussed. There are several scales. So you may have borders that are agreed on a certain zoom scale, but then if you go like too close to the international border, this is like may not be that well defined. And also there are several degrees of classification for international borders. There are like the common typical international border, but you have also several degrees of conflict and how they are basically contended. I mean, there are different levels of how to say, agreement on borders. So yeah. There is a database that is maintained especially by our colleagues in New York. And this is the one that is used in our case.
Okay, thank you, Michael, for this nice presentation. And I believe that it's very relevant to help these guys to work on these projects. So, as Politecnico, and now I will give the word to Federica in a moment, we have a community of students who are the mappers of Politecnico. In fact, it's called the Polymappers. And this can be a good bridge to start working also on this topic in order to contribute to the activity of UN mappers. Thank you. Okay, I close the registration and